This show is a hoot. It's definitely entertaining, and with a pretty heavy backstory, all things considered. I mean, anything like that would happen to anyone still in school would have to live with that for the entirety of that run. To see how he actually got roped back in by this very manipulative situation by Riona, there's definitely a lot of possibilities with her end goal here, because she's saying she'll marry anyone and she'll date anyone who even attempts and beats this game. I'm very curious where that's going to go. It's probably something financial, because every time Hiro's been at her store, there's literally been no customers, and seemingly they don't even carry new video games. How are the lights staying on? Like, what's going on? Is there an incentive for her to get someone to beat the game for a financial reward? Does she have to lure people in order to keep the lights on? Is she part of the reasons the servers are still active despite hardly any player base? There's definitely a lot of possibilities, and we'll touch upon more of that later on in the video. But I actually want to jump into first the kind of emotional struggle that Hiro went through in his past after being a star athlete and what caused him to give it up. Now, I'm sure there's going to be some people who will look at what happened, and it is funny if you're looking at it from a distance, right? It's a pretty awkward situation. You screw up, and because you didn't go pee before the race, after you fall over, kind of have to go, and there's no other option. And it's very easy for outsiders to say, oh, it's not that big of a deal. Yeah, it's embarrassing, but walk it off. Any person growing up, and especially in high school, if you were to do that, and you were once a renowned and very respected person, if they see you embarrassed, even just naturally, even if you try to walk it off, it will be very hard to overcome it. And yes, more often than not, if you own up to that mistake, you can probably overcome that trauma and make people just laugh alongside with you. But no one, and I mean no one, would be able to in the moment. It's an embarrassing situation. It's not this crazy thing like he broke his leg, but I'm glad that it was something pretty basic, but enough to ruin anyone's life. And while, yes, Hiro was an asshole for snapping at his sister who was just trying to help him, I mean, it's a pretty understandable reaction after not only making a fool of yourself in front of a silver medal Olympic winner, but also literally you feel like you ruined your entire shot, and that started his downward spiral. It's nothing crazy, it's nothing, I would say, absurdly complex, but I would honestly argue is one of the more original and realistic takes for a star athlete for failing. I mean, it's something that could ruin a lot of people's lives, because kids, especially teenagers, they do not let people live shit like that down. People are cruel, especially when growing up, and if you seem to be embarrassed, the more they'll fuel on that negativity. So it was interesting to see what actually caused him to want to give it up, and to see how he got roped back into the game. That was going to be the most interesting aspect about going into this episode, and I think they handled that pretty well as well. I mean, it's very easy for us as an outsider to say, why would you want to play this game? Why would you even believe that she would marry you? But when you see him, literally before his bullies even ask for money, him just giving them, $20, saying, is that good enough, as he walks away. He has no real friends. The one friend he has is very worried for him, and he won't take his advice. He feels like a failure from his past. He feels like he's going to be a failure in his future. He has nothing going on. He just wants to return this game, and everyone continues to bring him down. But this is clearly a story about self-improvement. It's crystal clear. The game literally thrives on your real-world stats, so he has to be physically capable. He has to basically improve himself in the normal world so he can be better in the normal game. Most likely, his speed is going to be his greatest asset in this show, I feel like, just granted with what he was able to do before he started playing, like full dive VR, MMOs, stuff like that. But it's very interesting because there's a lot of possibilities with Riona as a character, and without a doubt, whether she has good or bad intentions, it was a manipulative situation. A boy with clearly no girlfriend, with no real social skills right now, he's very afraid, and she uses her body in order to get him to keep playing, which, honestly, when you get to see the walkthrough from the man who actually completed the game, he's this very successful man now, but when he was playing the game, he was an edgelord who used to make very put down walkthroughs. Oh, you're a trash, you're this or that, you should kill yourself. And watching this walkthrough, on one hand, it's without a doubt the worst walkthrough I've ever seen. It just makes you feel like shit, but on the flip side, this is the only person who's ever beat it, and his advice is definitely better than anything Hiro's been given up until this point. I think there's going to be a lot of people on two different sides, one saying the reason he gave up track is probably not complex enough, and then there's probably going to also be people saying, why the hell would he believe it, just stop playing the game. But I would probably argue, after seeing the walkthrough, I would probably jump back into the game. Not even just for the girl, right? I'm just saying, like, literally the game there's at least a chance for you to navigate it a bit better. Like, there's good advice. Oh, there's a sword back in your room. We gotta get back in there. I wouldn't jump into it right away. I would make sure, maybe I start running a bit more just so I can have some speed to run away from people, but there is an appeal to this game after seeing the walkthrough. Before, I saw no appeal to it, but now seeing it, and then also, if we put ourselves in Hiro's shoes, Hiro at his current state is a failure. He's someone who's walked all over and has no hope for the future. He used to have that. This is clearly a game that forces you to be better in the real world, so there is a sort of addictive formula there, ignoring the clear lie of Riona, don't care about that at all. With that walkthrough, knowing how to get swords, it's a pretty interesting concept, buy what you need because it won't always be there, the stocks are limited, another realistic part of the game. There is an appeal to it, I have to 100% admit that. There is an appeal, and I'm starting to understand why maybe some people are saying, you know what, I'd try out the game maybe every so often. And as long as there's a walkthrough, as basic as it is, train your body, which already is helping you in the real world because you'll be more physically capable and damn well you aren't doing much in that VR chair. And then using the walkthrough and planning it. If something truly, truly bad happens, like you get your arm severed off by your new girlfriend who's literally obsessed over your pee-soaked sheet, yeah, at that point I would jump out. But now knowing there is some hope, even if that walkthrough puts you down, and potentially might even meet the man who actually created it in his current day-to-day life. To me, there is an actual addictive personality to that. I like how it kind of functions as even though the game technically is bad on so many aspects, there's a singular aspect that makes it intriguing. And I think there's plenty of gamers out there who's probably watching this episode or even this video saying, we've played plenty of games that most of it we absolutely hate, but there's this one little thing for whatever reason it was mind-numbing enough that we carry through because we like one aspect about the mechanics. And that's kind of what this episode gave me. Would I believe this girl? If you're put into his situation, I'm pretty sure anyone would believe that girl. He has nothing going on for him. He has no hope in the future, and an attractive girl is pressing her tits up against his back saying, I'll marry you. It's pretty easy to be swayed after you literally just gave your lunch money for the week to your bullies before they even asked, right? He's kind of a bitch in the real world. There's no other option. It kind of makes sense how he got roped back into it. I think this show is definitely really fun. It's humorous, it's ridiculous, but I think if you really put yourself in this character's shoes, the way things happen from pee-soaked pants literally flooding the track and everyone laughing at you, understandable why he became essentially a failure to most people looking at him, to even how he's getting roped back into this game. Up until this point, it made sense just with no other option. He already paid for it, might as well try it. The reason he was going to quit last week and why he joined back this week, I think they covered their track. A lot of times when you watch shows like this, I notice people looking at it from their own perspective saying, I would never do that. But if you were to actually place yourself in Hiro's situation, I mean, it's kind of obvious why things are happening like this, right? You can't expect a character to act like someone watching from a distance. You gotta put yourself in their shoes, and he was ready to opt out until someone was actually showing him some fun that he probably thought he would never have after getting titles both in his real life and in the game that are surrounding peeing your pants, right? This episode was definitely kind of humorous for being pretty twisted at multiple points, and it's interesting how dark and gloomy the reality is. It's usually a lot of grays and stuff like that, where the game's very colorful. Another kind of subtle clue that, he views reality as pretty gloomy as is, so the fact that the game does have maybe a more colorful atmosphere is another reason why he might get sucked into a game that could very well torture his soul. But I mean, even if he gets trapped in the game, does he have much that he's really rooting for in reality anyway, right? So it's like, you kind of understand where everything's coming from. Finished the first act, we got 8 more episodes left. I think they did a good job of covering their tracks. I'm sure there'll be some criticisms for both why he quit track as well as going back into the game. Putting yourself in his shoes, I kind of see where he's coming from, and as an anime fan watching the show, I'm glad he's going to keep playing because it's an entertaining ride, especially with that new game walkthrough that he just acquired. Let me know your thoughts and feelings down below, your favorite moment, and where do you think it's going to go with episode 5 now that he has a decent idea of where to go, and the little hint that he got about how to deal with his childhood friend. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, show your support, and hit that subscribe button if you have been new around here. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.